Harry Adams slowly opened his eyes. The bright white light of the hospital lamps forced him to close them. His whole body felt heavy, weak, almost dead. He tried to move his fingers, but they barely trembled. "Where am I? What happened?" he thought, feeling the fog in his head gradually dissipate. And then the memories came flooding back. The car, the accident, the smell of gasoline, sharp pain, and then darkness. He caught the faint beeping, the sounds of medical equipment, the hospital. But why did he feel so helpless, as if he had been lying here forever? Then a voice rang out, making him freeze. "Doctor, tell me, how long will he be like this? Will he remain lying like this?" He recognized the voice. It was his wife, Mary. The doctor hesitated. "The chances are slim, but miracles do happen." His wife sighed heavily. "I understand. Keep me posted." Harry's heart began to pound. Why did she sound disappointed? And then his world collapsed. Mary's phone rang. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. "Not for him. Darling, it's me. Yes, he signed the will. Everything is going according to plan." Harry's blood ran cold. She was talking about the will, about his death, and she seemed happy about it. Harry's fingers tightened slightly. His consciousness cleared. He was still too weak to fight, but he had made a choice to play dead. He lay still, holding his breath, making it shallow and rare. The sounds of the machines helped create the illusion. He listened. Every step, every word, every breath. It wasn't the first time he had heard her talk about the will. At that time, he had written it all off as hallucinations caused by the coma. But now there was no doubt. Her voice had changed again. Warm, gentle, as if she were talking to someone special. "Darling, I'm still in the hospital. Yes, everything is going according to plan. The doctor says he won't wake up, and even if he does, he won't live long." Harry's fingers curled into weak fists under the covers. "The will is ready," Lara said. "Once he's dead, the dealership will be mine, and then ours." Anger burned inside John. She hadn't just accepted his death. She was making plans for a future with another man, another life. The voice on the other end of the line said something, but John couldn't hear it. Lara giggled. "Of course, David, you'll run it with me. We'll make it into something more. No more of Harry's boring approach to business." Robert, the name stung, but it got worse. "David," she continued. David, his second in command. The one he'd always trusted, the one he'd helped, the one he'd given him a chance to prove himself. And now David was stealing his life. John was barely keeping his breathing even, but his head was spinning. Lara and David waited for him to die. What if they didn't? Would they try to kill him themselves? He couldn't wait. He had to act. But first, he had to find out everything. John's mind slid back to the night it all started. The memory was sharp as a blade, as if it was just waiting to break out of the shadows. It was a cold evening. The salon had already closed, and Harry was finishing up some paperwork in his office. His phone was on silent. When he looked at the screen, his heart sank. A message from Lara. "Harry, help me. I'm stuck on the bridge. I think someone is following me. I'm scared." Anxiety squeezed his chest. Lara was in danger. Without thinking, he grabbed his coat, ran out of the office, and jumped into his dark green sports car. He sped towards her, gripping the steering wheel, breaking the speed limit. One question was pulsing in his head. Why was she there alone? Who was following her? The closer they got to the bridge, the worse the storm became. Visibility was almost zero. The windshield wipers fought the sand, but it was of little use. And then, the brakes failed. He pressed the pedal. Nothing. The car slid along the road as if on ice. The bridge was very close. Two options: swerve into the ditch and take the hit, or crash into a car parked on the side of the road. There was no time. He turned the wheel sharply. The car spun, the tires screamed, and impact. Everything turned upside down. Metal rattled, glass shattered, pain pierced his body, and then darkness, silence. Harry's consciousness returned to the ward. His breathing became uneven. He could still feel that moment, the blow, the helplessness. But now something had changed inside him. He knew the truth. The night of the accident, Lara wasn't on the bridge. She was with David. While he was risking his life racing through the storm, she was spending time with another man, discussing how to get rid of him. Harry's fingers trembled. He had been set up, and he believed. Lying in the hospital room, he remembered again one moment that had seemed stupid to him then. It was the morning of the accident. He was at work preparing for a busy day, looking over reports, when Lisa, the cashier from the hall, knocked on the door. She looked worried, almost scared. "Mr. she said quietly, fiddling with the hem of her shirt. "Can I see you for a minute?" He didn't even look up from his papers. "Quickly, Lisa, I'm stuck." She swallowed. I had a bad dream." He rubbed his temples in irritation. "Lisa, I don't have time for dreams." But she didn't leave. It was about you," she said with difficulty. "You were in the car. There was an accident. You didn't survive." Harry looked up at her, squinting. Lisa's hands were shaking. "Say, please, mister, don't drive today. Take the day off. I don't know how to explain it, but I just feel like something terrible is going to happen." He chuckled and shook his head. "Lisa, I've been driving for 10 years. I don't believe in bad feelings." The girl's face darkened. It seemed she wanted to say something else, but changed her mind. "Okay," she whispered, stepping back. "I hope I was wrong." Now, lying wounded in a hospital bed, Harry felt his stomach twist. She was right. She had seen everything, and he had ignored her warning. But it was too late to regret it now. He was still alive, and he had a task far more difficult than just recovery. While he lay in his helpless body, Lara was taking away everything he had built over the years. He had to find out what was happening at the dealership now. Luxury Motors was no longer the friendly, trustworthy place it had once been. The employees were still hoping that Harry would recover, but Lara thought otherwise. She walked into the showroom in an expensive coat, as if she had always been the boss. Her heels clicked loudly on the floor as she called everyone to a meeting. The employees gathered, shifting from foot to foot. Lara stood in front of them, crossing her arms. "Listen carefully. Harry is gone, and now I am in charge. A lot is going to change here." The room fell silent. Lois stood at the very back, clasping her hands, her heart pounding. There was something ominous in Lara's voice. "No more wasteful spending," Lara continued. "From now on, the showroom will operate by my rules. If anyone doesn't like it, the door's over there." She turned to David, who stood next to her with a smug grin. "David will be handling the operations from now on," she announced. Their eyes met. David. He wasn't fit to run a salon. Harry was fair, caring. He considered the team a family. And Lara was a predator. The first blow came just 2 days later. Lois was called into the office. Her heart sank. Something was wrong. Inside, Lara and David were already waiting for her. Lara was sitting in John's chair, a chair that didn't belong to her, and smiling. "Lois," she said sweetly, "we have a problem." "What?" Lois managed to squeeze out. Lara sighed theatrically. "We have evidence that you were stealing money." Lois's heart stopped. David handed over a fake report. Supposedly funds were missing from the cash register. "That's not true," she cried. "Check the cameras. Ask the staff." "The decision is final," Lara said coldly. Lois's hands began to tremble. "You have no right." But David grabbed her hand roughly and led her to the exit. The staff watched in horror as she was dragged out of the salon. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She had once tried to warn Harry, and now she was paying the price. And Harry. He didn't know what was happening, but he sensed something terrible. He was right. Lois was gone. The salon was stolen. Lara and David had taken everything, but there was something he didn't know yet. He only survived thanks to a stranger. 3 weeks ago, the night of the accident, a blinding sandstorm, slippery road. John's car flipped over, crashed into a tree. Gas began to leak. Smoke poured out of the hood. Harry was unconscious, belted in. The explosion was seconds away. People stood aside watching the burning car. No one moved. No one, except Tom. Toby was homeless, a lonely wanderer, seeking shelter from the cold in a nearby alley. He heard a crash, and instead of running, he ran toward trouble. Through the storm, against the wind and sand, he reached the car smelling gasoline. He knew he had to act now. Through the broken glass, he saw the man inside, bleeding, unconscious. It was Harry. Toby took a deep breath, picked up a heavy piece of concrete, and slammed it on the driver's door. The window shattered. Blood was running down Toby's arms, but he didn't stop. "Come on, wake up," he screamed, trying to pull Harry out of the burning car. The body was heavy, lifeless. The smell of gasoline was getting stronger. The flames were getting closer. There was no time left. Gritting his teeth, Toby climbed inside, and with the last of his strength, pulled John out. 10 feet, 20, and an explosion. The car was torn apart. Flames soared into the sky. Toby fell to the ground, breathing heavily. He made it. He saved the man. He was alive. Barely. After the accident, Toby disappeared. No one knew who pulled John out of the fire. Not the doctors, not the nurses, not Harry himself. But fate had other plans, and soon they would meet again, face to face. The heat was unbearable. The sun mercilessly beat down on the dusty streets. Tom walked slowly, his body aching from that night. He didn't expect a reward. He just did what he thought was right. But the streets were cruel. He paid a price. His vision was blurring. His legs were buckling. And then he collapsed by the curb. For a few moments he lay there, struggling for breath, unable to move. "Hey, are you okay?" The voice, he knew it. Through the hazy veil, he saw a woman's face leaning over him. It was Lois. She was walking home after Laura and David had thrown her out of the dealership. She hadn't gone more than a block when she spotted a man standing by the side of the road. At first, she thought he was drunk, but as she got closer, she saw blood, tiredness in his eyes. "Max," she called, waving at the dealership guard who had just finished his shift. "This guy's in bad shape," Max muttered, dropping down next to him. "We need to get him to shelter," Lois said firmly. Together, they lifted Toby, supporting him on either side, and led him into a dark storage room behind the store, a place Max's old friend had once let them use. It was cool inside, dark, safe. When Tom's breathing had evened out, Lois handed him a mug of water. "Drink," she said softly. Tom froze. Then he took a few sips. For the first time in a long time, he felt calm. He didn't know that he would soon meet the man he had saved from death. He sat in the shadows in the dimly lit room and slowly drank the water. His body was still shaking with pain, but something new was already glimmering inside him. Hope. The coolness of the small room was a relief from the scorching heat. Lois and Max sat across from Toby, looking at him carefully. "What happened to you?" Lois finally asked. "You look like you've been through hell." Toby chuckled weakly and rubbed his forehead. "You could say that." Max shook his head. "That cut on your head is bad. You're lucky Lois found you." Toby paused for a moment, then sighed heavily. "I should have died by rights." Lois and Max exchanged worried glances. "What do you mean?" Lois asked quietly. Toby leaned back against the wall, looking at the ceiling. 3 weeks ago, I pulled a man out of a burning car." Lois's breathing hitched. "A burning car?" Tom nodded. "There was an accident. Serious. People were just standing there, afraid to come closer. And I ran. Broke the glass, pulled him out." Max frowned. "You saved someone's life." "I barely got out myself," Toby muttered. Lois's heart pounded. The car. The man inside. The memory hit her like an electric shock. The accident. Harry. She grabbed Toby's hand. "That man, do you remember what he looked like?" Toby looked at her in surprise. "I don't know, it was dark. His face was covered in blood. He was unconscious." "Was it a dark green car?" she asked, her voice shaking. Toby's eyes widened. "Yeah, how do you know?" Lois and Max looked at each other, shocked. "I don't know, it was dark. His face was covered in blood. He was unconscious." "Was it a dark green car?" she asked, her voice shaking. Tom's eyes widened. "Yeah, how do you know?" Lois and Max looked at each other, shocked. "Then let's go," Lois said decisively. "We must tell him everything." Tom hesitated. What if Laura has already gotten to him? What if she won't let him wake up? Lois's stomach twisted. Then we're already too late. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Harry couldn't wait any longer. He had heard enough. He knew what Laura was planning. Her visits had become rare and cold. He felt that his life was in danger. If he stayed here, he couldn't change anything. He had to leave, today. The only person he could trust was Nurse Sarah. She was kind, attentive, and most importantly, she was silent when he whispered. She wanted Retina, "Please don't tell anyone that I'm awake." Now she was standing next to his bed, holding a small bag in her hands. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "You're still too weak." Harry gripped the edge of the bed. "It doesn't matter. If I stay, Laura will finish what she started." Sarah sighed heavily but helped him up. His body ached, his muscles felt like cotton wool, but he gritted his teeth and walked. Sarah handed him his clothes. "These are my brothers, they should fit." Harry quickly changed. In the mirror, he saw a man he almost didn't know, in worn jeans and a plain t-shirt. Sarah handed him his cane. "You can't do this without it." "Thank you," he whispered. Quietly, almost inaudibly, they left the hospital. Harry's heart pounded harder and harder as he approached his home. The house he had built, the house he had shared with Laura. He inserted the key into the lock, but it didn't fit. His stomach clenched. She had changed the locks. He clenched his jaw. Laura had wasted no time. She had rewritten everything for herself, erased his trace. She wanted him to never even think of coming back. He couldn't just leave. He needed to know what was going on inside. And then, wild luck, the gate was ajar. He slowly, carefully pushed it and entered. The house was lit, music was playing, and laughter. A chill ran down his spine. He went to the window and looked inside. On his couch, in his house, in his clothes, sat David. In his hand, a glass of expensive whiskey. Opposite, Lara, smiling, her feet on his lap. Harry caught his breath. His wife, his best employee. They lived in his house, in his life, at his expense. He clutched his cane. This time, Turhin, he would not run away. He will come back. John's fingers tightened around his cane. Everything inside him screamed at him to break into the house, to scream, to push David out of his life. But he took a deep breath. No, not now. Laura and David were sure that he was either dead or dying. He had one chance to turn everything around, and he would take it. He stood in front of his own house, his fist clenched. Sarah, who had been waiting patiently by the gate, came closer. The rage that raged inside him was like nothing he had ever felt before. There was laughter inside the house. They were drinking his whiskey, sitting in his chair, as if they had already won. John's muscles tensed, but he remained in the shadows. I need to hear everything, he whispered, turning to Sarah. He needed to know the full extent of the betrayal. And inside, Laura leaned toward David, smiling broadly. Can you imagine? She said, swirling her glass. Almost funny. Harry ran the salon like an idiot for so many years, and now he's ours. David grinned. I won't lie, baby. It was easier than I thought. Once Harry was out of the game, it was a matter of technique. Out of the game, Harry gritted his teeth. It's just a shame the accident didn't finish the job, Laura said, feigning a sigh. Harry's heart stopped. David grinned. He's in a coma. He won't wake up, and if he does, we'll fix it. John's blood ran cold. They wanted him dead. Not just money, not just power. They were ready to kill. Laura put her glass down and leaned in. By the way, are you sure you did everything right? To make it look like an accident? Of course, David chuckled. The brakes failed just when they should have. Harry felt the air leaving him. They had set it all up. The accident was no accident. That text was a trap. Laura knew he would come, and David had made sure the brakes failed at the right moment. He was never supposed to survive. He was shaking with rage. Years of love for Laura, years of trust in David, and this is how they repaid him. He could go in now, show them that the ghost was back, that he was alive, that he knew everything. Or he could wait, play by their rules, and beat them at their own game. He glanced down the street. Somewhere out there, Lois, Max, and Toby were already looking for him, but they had no idea he was already free, and how far the betrayal had gone. A cold, hard smile appeared on Harry's lips. They thought they had won. They didn't know the storm was coming. Lois, Max, and Toby burst into the hospital, their hearts pounding in their chests. They drove fast. Harry knew nothing of what had happened in his absence. Lois ran up to the counter. Harry, where is he? The nurse frowned, leafing through the paperwork. Mister, she froze. He's not here anymore. Lois turned pale. What do you mean, no? He's checked out, the nurse shrugged. Max stepped forward. He checked out? When? About an hour ago, she said, glancing at her watch. A chill ran down Lois's spine. They were late. Meanwhile, across town, Harry sat in the cozy room of a small guest house. He had escaped from the hospital, but he knew he needed to find Lois, warn her. But he couldn't risk calling from his phone in case Lara or David traced the call. He turned to Sarah, the only one with him. I need to find a woman. Her name is Lois. She worked for me. Sarah nodded, already dialing the number. Wait a minute. She spoke quietly, listening carefully. Then she smiled. She's on her way. Harry exhaled. For the first time since waking up, he felt like he wasn't alone. An hour later, Lois, Max, and Toby arrived at the house. Lois entered first, her eyes filled with tears. Mr. Harry. Harry turned around. He looked weaker than before, but his eyes were filled with determination. Lois ran up to him, grabbed his hands. You're alive, she whispered. He nodded slowly. Alive. Max walked up, shaking his head. We thought we lost you, boss. Harry smiled weakly. Almost. Then his gaze fell on Toby, standing a little to the side. He frowned. This is Toby, Lois said. He's the reason you're alive. Harry stared at him. A moment of silence. Then Harry walked up and shook his hand firmly. You saved my life. Toby looked away awkwardly. I just did what anyone would have done. No, Harry shook his head. Anyone else would have stood there and watched me burn. And you threw yourself into the fire. Toby swallowed, his eyes darting around the room. John squeezed his hand tighter. I owe you everything. He looked straight into Toby's eyes, then said confidently, and I promise you'll get everything you deserve. But before he could pay Toby back, before he could get his life back, there was something more important. He looked at Lois, Max, and Toby. His face hardened. Laura and David think I'm going to die soon. His voice was firm. But they don't even know I'm already awake. Harry's eyes lit up. Lois clenched her fists. They took your business, Mr. Harry. Max nodded. They're living in your house. John's jaw tightened. Then it's time to take it all back. He sat in the dimly lit room of the cozy little house, the only safe place he could find. Across from him were Lois, Max, Toby, and Sarah. They were all tense. For the first time since the accident, John felt his strength returning control. He was no longer a helpless man in a hospital room. He was Harry Adams, and he was going to take it all back. Lois couldn't take her eyes off him. You're really alive, Harry smiled weakly. Sure, thanks to you. He looked at Toby, the man who had risked his life for him. I owe you one. If you ever need anything, just say so. Toby hesitated. I'm not here for the reward. Harry nodded. That's why you deserve it. Lois smiled as she watched the men shake hands. Meanwhile, Laura and David sat quietly in his house, drinking his whiskey, wearing his clothes, and were sure they had won. But that would change tonight. John's team worked together. Max used his old codes to disable the alarm. Lois distracted the guard at the gate by setting up a fake delivery. Toby took up position at the back door in case David tried to escape. Sarah waited in the car. John stood in front of the door. His heart was beating steadily. He held his cane. He pressed the doorbell. David opened the door in John's silk robe. At first, he didn't even realize who it was. But then his face turned pale. You're supposed to be dead. I hear that a lot lately, John replied and walked into the house without an invitation. Laura came out of the hallway with a glass of wine. She almost dropped it, her eyes darting between John and David. Harry, I can explain everything. No need. John cut her off abruptly and walked around the house. Everything was in its place. Everything, except for the betrayal. The locks were changed, he muttered. You were quick. Laura swallowed hard. Harry, I made a mistake. He turned around, his gaze turned icy. No, a mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is breaking a plate. He took a step forward. Samarana, but trying to kill your husband? His voice became dull and dangerous. It's not a mistake. It's murder. Laura held her breath. David tensed. The trap snapped shut. Harry turned his gaze to him. You cut my brakes, John stared at David. David's face went pale. That's a lie. Harry chuckled darkly. Really? He pulled out his phone and turned on the audio recording. David's voice filled the room. Of course the brakes failed just when you needed them to. Laura gasped. David stepped back. John had proof. So, David, he said, taking a step forward. What's your next move? David's eyes darted to the back door. But before he could move, Toby walked into the room. Where are you going? He asked, cracking his knuckles. David froze. He was trapped. Laura sank to her knees. Harry, please, I was desperate. You were greedy, John replied coldly. She grabbed his leg, sobbing. Swear, we'll fix it. We'll put it back the way it was. He looked at her with disgust. Sonoram, there's no turning back. He stepped back, shaking her hands off. Pack your things and go. Laura's face twisted. Harry, please. Now, his voice was final. Laura burst into tears, but she knew it was over. She stood up and stumbled upstairs. David was still standing, his fists clenched. The fear in his eyes had turned to rage. You think you won? He hissed. You're a weakling, Harry. You're nothing without me. Harry smirked. Dusokon. You mean that car dealership that's about to go bankrupt? The one that lost half its customers in the last 3 weeks? David fell silent. You think I don't know what you've done? You're finished, David. He pushed him away sharply and rushed to the door. You'll regret it. Not as much as you, Harry answered calmly. David wanted to say something, but when he met Toby's gaze, he changed his mind and walked out into the night. Harry exhaled. He had his home back. But it was just beginning. The last battle remained. The house fell silent. For the first time in weeks, Harry was alone, free from traitors. Laura and David had betrayed him, deceived him, tried to kill him. Now they had to be punished. Harry took out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. Detective Coma speaking. I have information on a fraud case you closed 3 years ago. I think it should be re-examined. Nafran, who's speaking? There was a pause. Harry's voice was firm. Harry. He told everything. How Laura manipulated him, forged documents, stole money, and how she had gotten away with it all so far. But now Harry had proof. Lois and Max had been keeping track of suspicious transactions at the dealership. Toby had overheard conversations linking Laura to previous scams, and after the attempted murder, her guilt could no longer be hidden. Harry hung up. The police were on their way. Finally, it was over. Upstairs, Laura was packing her things, too quietly. Harry turned around just in time to see her lunge at him with a heavy glass vase, her face twisted with rage. "You ruined everything," she screamed, swinging her arm. But it didn't hit. Sarah grabbed her hand sharply, twisting her wrist. The vase slipped and shattered on the floor. Laura screamed and fell to her knees. "You're done," Sarah said firmly, looking down at her. Sirens began to wail in the distance. A minute later, 2 police cars pulled up outside the house. Detective Yves Kamal walked in first, surveying the scene. Harry stood calmly, confidently. "She tried to kill me," he said, "and I have evidence that she's been running a scam for years." The officers moved quickly. David, who was trying to escape, was pulled from the car and immediately handcuffed. Laura fought back furiously, but 2 police officers pinned her arms. She looked at John with hatred blazing in her eyes. "You think it's over," she hissed. "You'll regret it, Harry, I swear it." Harry came closer, looking at her with icy indifference. "The only thing I regret," he said, "is that I didn't figure you out sooner." Laura screamed and struggled as they dragged her toward the car. The doors slammed shut and the cars drove away. It was over. Harry stood at the threshold. Lois, Max, Toby, and Sarah were there. They had been through this together. He took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, he felt free. The storm had died down. Harry had his life, his home, and his future back. Now it was time to rebuild. The next morning, he walked into Luxury Motors for the first time since the accident. The employees gasped when they saw him, some in shock, some in relief. They had all heard the rumors, but here he stood, stronger than ever. Harry walked around the room, surveying the business that David had left behind. He knew it was just beginning, but on his terms. The financial situation was dire. The dealership was in disrepair, and customer trust was eroded. It was time to change something, and Harry knew exactly where to start. He stood in front of his employees and, clearing his throat, said, "Things will be different." The room fell silent. Everyone looked at him expectantly. Harry turned to Lois. "Lois, you stayed loyal to the company even when it turned its back on you. You tried to warn me, to help me, and you didn't give up. As of today, you're no longer a cashier. You're the new head of customer service." Lois's eyes widened. Harry smiled. You deserve it." A tear rolled down her cheek. She nodded. "Thank you." Then he turned to Max, the janitor. "Max, you've been here the longest. You know every corner of this place, and you've been there for me when I couldn't see you. I want you to be the operations manager." Max chuckled. "Harry, I clean the floors. What kind of manager am I?" "And now you are," Harry said. The whole room erupted in applause, but there was still one promotion left. He looked at Toby, the man who had saved his life. "Toby, I don't know much about you, but I do know that you're brave, reliable, and a person who can be trusted. If you agree, I want you to be on the executive team, responsible for security and logistics." Toby blinked. "The executive team?" Harry nodded. "It's the least I can do for you." Toby shook his hand firmly. "I won't let you down." From that day on, the dealership was in good hands. That same evening, John went to the hospital, not as a patient, but as someone who had something to say. Sarah was just finishing her shift when she saw him at the door. "You're looking better," she said with a soft smile. Harry took a deep breath. "Sure, thanks to you." "Yeah?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. Harry chuckled. "You helped me when no one else would. You trusted me. You risked your job for me." "Are you saying thank you or something else?" she asked curiously, crossing her arms. He looked at her seriously. "I realized I cared about you, more than I realized." Her gaze softened. She stepped closer. So what now? It's up to you, Harry smiled. Are you free tonight? Sarah laughed. Harry, are you asking me out on a date? Exactly, he replied, beaming. Finally, she said with a grin. They left together to a new beginning. Harry had lost everything, but in the end he had gained more than he could have expected. True friends, loyal people by his side, and a woman who truly appreciated him. And as he drove away from the hospital, he knew for sure the best was yet to come.